I'm Jake. I've been a fan of Christian hip-hop since 2012, and I'm sure if you've been listening for however long, you'd agree with me that 2024 was one of the best years we've ever had in Christian hip-hop, at worst in recent history and at best ever. And man, I just wanted to take the opportunity to just talk about the albums that came out this year. There's just so much good music, and I don't really have too many people in my life that I'm able to talk Christian hip-hop with, so I just figured I'd hop on a camera, give my thoughts, and hopefully have the opportunity to engage with some of you just about some of these albums that I love this year. Now, originally I was only going to do 10, 15, but man, good albums just kept coming and coming and coming, so this is going to be a top 25 list as well as some honorable mentions. I listened to 92 CHH projects total from 2024. I managed to narrow it down to my top 25 as well as a few honorable mentions. So that said, everything that's on this list I think very highly of, I like a lot, and everything I say is my opinion. And I also want to mention as well that this list is for projects, not just albums. So there are some mixtapes, there are some EPs, but generally speaking, I do favor albums. I think there's more that you can say on albums, so this list does include more albums, but there are some EPs, there are some mixtapes on here as well. I just want to mention here, I have a screen behind me that I'll be looking at every once in a while. It just has some notes behind me. So if you see me look up, that's what I'm doing. Starting off with the honorable mentions, I have Ecleso's Loner, as well as A3's Sacred Calling. Now, both of these were shorter projects that I think had they been longer would probably find a spot on this list. Both were energetic, both were lively, both were creative and exciting, and I'm excited to see what both of these artists do next. Another honorable mention here is Scooty Wop's Side B, Lullabies. I really enjoyed that one. I didn't quite make the list, but just a strong project from Scooty Wop on that one. Another honorable mention is D1's album Loaded. Thought that was a great release from D1 this year. I also want to mention Reese Lachey's For Such a Time. That was a solid project, as well as a project that really grew on me over the course of the year, that being Not Clyde's I Heart NK. And finally, I just want to mention as well that at the time of recording this video, Taylor Gray released an album a couple days ago entitled Only Die Nice. Now, I just want to say this is an album that would most likely have made my list had I been able to have more time to sit with it and just figure out my exact thoughts with it. But just as it's so new, I just made the decision to not put it on the list and just leave it as a honorable mention for now. And so now with that, why don't we move into the top 25? We're going to start off at number 25 with Aaron Cole's Sorry I Changed. This was a really solid release from Aaron Cole. Sorry I Changed really showed off Cole's versatility as both a rapper and as a singer. That said, I wish he'd gone into his vocal bag a bit more on this album, as moments that he was singing were really the highlights for me on this album, but that's not to undersell his rapping by any means. His performances were solid as well. I Love It was one of the most enjoyable songs of the entire year in my opinion. Just had some hypnotic windpipes going on in the background, and mixed with Cole's smooth, silky singing voice just really worked super well here. I'd love to hear an entire album that has the feel and the vibe of this particular song, but regardless, I'm excited to see what Cole does next. On this project, he really continues to cement himself as one of the stronger artists that we have in CHH. Now at number 24, I'm going with one of the biggest commercial releases of the year, that being Pray for Atlanta by 1K Phew, produced by Zaytoven. Now this is an album that I found myself coming back to over and over again throughout the course of the year. While there were some moments on here, or even a track or two that I wasn't necessarily crazy about, I just found the entire album to be a super enjoyable listen. I found myself kind of caught between sort of the catchy side of things and the album that kind of made me move, as well as some lyrics that just displayed kind of some hood lament and just loss of loved ones, loss of friends. Just a weird juxtaposition between those two things that just really drew me in, and I found, despite such an upbeat album, for it to be actually quite profound. I think Phew just did it really well. Coming in now at number 23, I have Take You to Paris by Paris Chariz. This is another installment in Paris' super strong discography. I don't have too much to say about this one other than it's just another super solid album, which we've come to expect from Paris at this point in his career. It's a pretty run-of-the-mill Paris album, but if you've ever heard Paris Chariz before, you know that's definitely not a bad thing. And now at number 22, I have an album that I'll just say, for a Reach Records album, I didn't think was talked about nearly enough this year. It was an album that I personally really enjoyed, and that is Anike's self-titled album, Anike. With the name change, we really got a genre change as well, and Anike really pulls it off strongly on this album. I may not have been crazy about everything here musically, but I still think it was an album with a lot of strong beats, a lot of catchy tunes, and ultimately just an album that had me moving the whole time I was listening to it. I felt as though the sound of the album really matched kind of that bright yellow sunshiny album cover. It was just, a nice bright sunny listen, and ultimately I'm surprised this album wasn't talked about as much as I think it should have been. Now at number 21, I'm going with an album that was released a little bit later in the year, and that is Though the Scars Remain by C4 Cortona, the production on it being by Dax Hammer. This album has one of the best opening tracks of the entire year, and the momentum that track creates just really continues to permeate through the remainder of the track list. C4 Cortona is just such a heavy hitter, man. This album also just really plays as a testimony for C4 Cortona's life and for his coming to Christ. It's an album that's powerful, but it's also really personal. Coming from a battle rap background, you can really kind of get that aggressiveness that comes out of C4 Cortona. The whole album kind of has a spit-in-your-face sort of aura to it, and it's just a really, really great listen. If you missed this one, do yourself a favor and go listen to it. Now at number 20, kind of sticking in the gritty CHH sort of realm, we have Guillotines on the East 3 by YP aka Young Paul, the Commissioner, and Dax Hammer, who I just mentioned produced C4 Cortona's album. These guys combined for one of the nastiest, most teeth-gritting performances of the entire year. The production here is consistently pretty great. It's a true East Coast boom bap sound that seems to be making a resurgence here in the CHH space, and I personally am very much not mad about that. Now at number 19, I've gone with Abel's Musical Chairs. Abel delivers some of the most effortless bars that I've heard all year on this project, and he does it in large doses. This project is only 15 minutes long, but it's just packed with bar after bar after bar after bar. This album has the highest bars per second squared of any album that I've heard this year. The production's solid, and it's just overall an enjoyable short listen. Abel really cements himself as one of the best up-and-coming lyricists that we have in CHH, and I'm really excited to see what he does next. I just want to mention as well, he had one of the best verses on Bodega 2. I just started that project off super strong, and shout out to Abel. Really solid year for him. Now, if you've been a CHH fan for a decent amount of time, you'd probably agree with me that one of the most exciting moments of the entire year was when Jackie Hill Perry announced that she was returning to CHH and had signed with Reach Records. Though there was some controversy surrounding that whole thing with her comments on lyricism in CHH, it was still an exciting moment. As a big fan of Jackie, particularly with her 2014 album The Art of Joy being one of my favorite albums all time in Christian hip-hop, I was just super excited to hear that she was coming back. She's a voice that I think our space has really been missing, and just excited to hear her make new music on a Reach Records budget, no less. That said, this project really stays true to its name, Practice. It really does feel like just a short project that is just Jackie coming back and using as practice as a means of getting back into things after being out for 6 years. But that said, Jackie Hill Perry's Practice is better than most artists' Super Bowl, and so that's why she has a spot on this list here at number 18. Just a solid short project from Jackie, and I'm so excited to see what she does next. Coming in at number 17, I have Eyes on the One from Nazareth by Eshon Burgundy. This is a project that I feel quite similarly to the way I feel about Jackie Hill Perry's project. Eshon Burgundy has been one of my favorite CHH artists for a long time, and while this project may sound like a bit of an interlude in Eshon's grand catalog, it's still a great project. Eshon Burgundy continues to be one of the greatest lyricists, one of the greatest rappers that we have in our space. Even if it isn't as large as some of his other projects, Eshon's flow and delivery continues to remain borderline unmatched in CHH. And honestly, borderline unmatched just in wider music. Like, Eshon is genuinely, I believe, one of the best rappers in the world right now, and this album is another example of that. Production on here is a little understated, but that allows Eshon's voice to really be the focal point of the project, and that works really well because it's Eshon. Now, moving into our number 16 spot, I have the album Judas by A.O. Shamir. This is a long, gritty, just full feeling album from A.O. Shamir and a whole team of MCs on this one. It's filled with aggressive verses, witty lyricism, great production, and is ultimately one of the strongest rap albums of the entire year. One criticism that I often hear kind of about the gritty CHH movement that this album would kind of occupy the space of is that, these guys are stuck in the past, they're making music from a decade ago, 2 decades ago, but at least it sounds good compared to maybe some of the music that newer artists are making that are trying to be experimental but just isn't working out for them. These guys are hip-hop artists to their core, and they're making great music on this one, and this album just really showcases that. If you haven't heard this one and you're more of an old school East Coast fan, this is one you really have to check out. Moving now to our number 15 project, I've gone with Indie Tribe's Indie 500. While obviously shorter than the previous 2 Indie Tribe releases, Indie Tribe maintains the quality that we've come to expect from them, and that quality is only enhanced by the addition of Tory Deshawn on this project. He plays off the other guys really well, and the collective energy on this project is really palpable. Overall, it may not be as profound as other Indie Tribe albums, just given the length of the project, but the quality definitely doesn't waver on this one. Now at number 14, I'm going with The Solution by Intellect. Intellect pumped out so much music this year, but this project was definitely the highlight for me. It has some of the best instrumentals I heard all year, and if you're into record scratching at all, this is definitely an album you should check out. It's an incredibly tight project, and it hits in all the right places. It's one of the best boom bap records of the year for sure, and Intellect really did his thing on this one. Now at number 13, I've gone with The Lord is Beauty by Alert 312. The trio of brothers here really perfectly blended soft, catchy choruses with strong, punchy verses. They play off of each other so well, and the singing on this album is borderline otherworldly. You'll have like an angelic chorus that will have you floating, and then in will come this strong verse that kind of brings you back to earth. And that cycle just repeats throughout the entire project. I love how focused it is on one specific attribute of God, that being His beauty. It's thoughtful and creative and scratches a specific itch of theologically rich, yet also personal music that I think we're missing a little bit in CHH. If you love and miss Beautiful Eulogy as much as I do, this is definitely one that you can't miss. Number 12, I'm going with Christ-Like California by Miles Minnick. The hype music nature of this project clashes so heavily with my usual tastes, but Christ-Like California just accomplishes everything that it seeks to do and really does it quite well. While at times maybe the project can feel a bit one-note, perhaps even a little youth groupy, Minnick does it fairly tastefully, and it's quite strong musically. I found that numerous songs would be stuck in my head for days after each listen. It's not super deep necessarily or conceptual by any means, but that's really all that holds it back from being any higher on this list. It's just a really enjoyable listening experience, and I couldn't find myself justifying putting it any lower. Now coming in at number 11, I made the controversial decision to put 2 albums here at the same place, and those are The People We Became and The People We Became Reimagined, both by No Big Deal, with the latter done large in part by 350. The 2 albums are clearly sonically and aesthetically different. I just couldn't justify placing them as separate albums on this list. And even if I did, they'd still probably end up right next to each other. With the original version, it's so clear that No Big Deal really came through with one of the most important projects of the entire year. And perhaps even more important, honestly, is the reimagined version. What a creative idea to take an album and recreate it in a way that No Big Deal did here. Just going back to the original project, I feel like there were so many moments on here that I think will really stand the test of time. I think of songs like Empty Without You, and also I think the Imago interlude is something we'll carry with us for a long time. The mantra, you don't know Jesus until you see him in your enemy, is really a line that I think will be used in wider church culture as well. Sermons, books, podcasts, just anything like that, unless No Big Deal is already copyrighted, which I wouldn't be able to blame him for. It's pretty genius. Shout out to Dill for a huge year, and he's undoubtedly the MVP of CHH this year with all the music that he released, all the waves that he made in the space, and just really a huge year for him. And if you're wondering, I do like the reimagined version just a little bit more. Now, coming in at number 10, I have an album that has received a lot of praise prior to its release and after its release as well, and that is Tori Deschan's Come and See. Now, this is a great album, and I think it has a lot of heart, but for whatever reason, I just didn't find myself, I think, enjoying it as much as some other people did. And the best way that I could describe it is that the album kind of feels like sand, and I'm kind of holding on to it, but it's like slipping through the cracks of my fingers for whatever reason. And I think maybe that's the difference between me and someone that has this as their album of the year, is maybe they're just grasping something that I'm not yet, and once I get it, that album will become one of my favorites as well. But for now, I think this album fits perfectly at number 10. Still a great album, but for me personally, I don't think I was as high on it as some other people were. And I'll just say, Tori is undeniably one of the most talented young voices that we have in this entire space. I think his potential is through the roof. And if you were to ask me who I think will make the next great kind of album in our space that transcends the subgenre, I'm thinking something like Eremos by John Keith or New Hollywood by What Up RG, just as some recent examples. I would say it would be from Tori Deschan, but I just don't think that this album is quite it yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if the next one is. Just with how talented he is, it's no surprise to me that this is the guy the Indie Tribe looked to when they made the decision to expand. Now at number 9, I have what I would have considered to be my most anticipated release of the year, that being Halvey's Cry. Now, this is still a very strong album, obviously, given its placement on this list. But if I'm being completely honest, I was a little bit disappointed. Like, I was expecting this to be my album of the year before I heard it. There are a lot of great tracks on this project, and I really appreciate the artistry that Halvey attempted to display in kind of splitting this into 3 parts: communion, reflection, yearning, to represent cry, and it being 17 songs to just represent John 17:3, the theme verse of the album. Yeah, there were just too many moments on this album that made it hard for me to justify putting it any higher. I found the production choices on Poor Party and Miracles to be a little grating, and I'm also not a huge fan of the song Love Like That, which I know is crazy to hear. And I know it kind of sounds like I'm harping this album, but I'm really just trying to justify not having it higher, as I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you watching this maybe have it higher than I did. And yeah, kind of the same thing with the Tori Deschan one. Keep in mind that I listened to a lot of CHH albums this year, so being number 9 really means something, and I do think this is a great album. I just don't think it's necessarily as strong of a contribution to the Christian hip-hop space as Halvey's previous albums, Christopher and Coma, but I'm still excited to see what he releases next. Now at number 8, I've gone with Taylor Gray and Peace 586's Let the Church Say Amen. Taylor Gray adds to his Hall of Fame catalog on this project. It's produced by Peace 586. What I love about Taylor is that he seems to make so much music, but he never runs out of things to say. This album is one of the most substantive of the entire year, and Taylor really never takes a verse off. He's a legend in this space, and this project is just another reason why. This project is old school and nostalgic, but it's also modern and relevant. Yeah, I just really can't say enough good things about this project, or about Taylor Gray. Now at number 7, I'm going with my EP of the year, that being Every Day We Die by Dayton and C4 Cortona, produced by Thanos. Now, Thanos provides some of the best instrumentals of the entire year. It's jazzy a lot of the time and plays off of Dayton and C4 Cortona's aggressive style super well. It's a short project, but it works in just how focused it manages to be throughout its 25-minute runtime. Dayton and C4 Cortona's delivery perfectly fit the subject matter, and the pathos of this album comes through as sullen, but also a bit angry, which I think is fitting for an album about death and hell. And it makes sense that an album featuring Dayton and C4 Cortona would work out so well, given that they're undeniably 2 of the best rappers that we have in CHH. Also, just want to mention that Dayton's verse on the opening track is potentially my verse of the year. Just really crazy and visceral storytelling from him on that one. Also, this would just be the time to mention just how huge of a year it's been for C4 Cortona. Between this project, his own project, Though the Scars Remain, his contributions on Ao Shamir's Judas, as well as having one of the best verses on Bodega 2, he solidifies himself as one of the best up-and-coming MCs. Really excited to see what he continues to do. Now at number 6, I'm going with an early year release, that being Jared Sanders' Talk to Me Nice Volume 1. It's so clear listening to Sanders' music that he's really a student of hip-hop, and that's really propelled him into vet status at this point in his career, and really is one of the premier artists in our space. This project is really a breath of fresh air, and it really returns to the basics of hip-hop while managing to avoid sounding stale in any way. This album perhaps can be inconsistent at times, but contains some of the best tracks in the year, most notably Back Up, which is a 4.5-minute track featuring Sale of the Corner and William Catta. It contains one of the most catchy choruses and strong verses from all three guys as well. There were times that I found myself just saying that chorus to my cats throughout the year. This album has kind of a classic feeling about it as well that brought me back to it throughout the year. I think it's one of the projects from this year that I'll return to the most in the future. It just has a nostalgic feel to it that I love, and yeah, very deserving of its spot here at number 6. Now at number 5, I've gone with what I would consider to be the most slept on, the most underrated album of the entire year, and that is Storylines by Will Kellum. Kellum really delivered on this one with a lyrically potent body of work, but also some great singing on the choruses, and he does it in a way that avoids feeling dated at all. It also contains one of the best closing tracks of the entire year, that being the track My Story, in which Kellum reflects on his own testimony, ultimately including that he doesn't need another story because it's all for God's glory. It's a really powerful message that's augmented by some dynamic keys and a really beautiful vocal performance from David Isaiah, I believe, was the one singing the chorus there. And yeah, if you missed this album this year, please listen to it. It's fantastic. And at number 4, I'm going with 350's 3. Does anyone know you're going this way? What a year for 350. Between this album, his contributions on The People We Became Reimagined, and 3 appearances on Bodega 2. The fact that DJ Mike LV in 1995 turned to him 3 times on that project just speaks to his versatility and ability as an artist. He's clearly one of the more respected newer artists in our space and really seems to be kind of an artist, and it's not hard to see why with this project. His sound is so unique and he's really paving his own way sonically while avoiding some of the growing pains that come with being so experimental. I feel as though 350 made such a weighty album despite such airy production. It's really one that sticks with you. Coming to mind is the last track in which 350 reflects on the neglect that he faced from his father, which resulted in him abusing some of his siblings, and now at 25 having the opportunity to love like a real father now. Really beautiful moment on a beautiful record, and yeah, just a great showing from 350 on this one. Now at number 3, I have what I might consider to be the most important album of the year, and that is Bodega 2 by DJ Mike LV in 1995. Now this is one of those albums that I think we'll always look to as one of those genre-defining moments in CHH. It really builds off of Bodega 1, which is already a great project, and brings in even more heavy hitters that just provides an uptick of quality. DJ Mike LV did a really perfect job of getting the right people on here to make this album what it is. And what I love about what DJ Mike LV is doing here is he really bridged the old era in CHH and the new era in CHH and made a sound that's really timeless. 1995's production is super high quality while avoiding some of the pitfalls of hyper-commercial, super polished sound that comes with some label-backed CHH. And you could tell that everyone who got a verse on this project really wanted to make the most of their opportunity here. And so yeah, everyone kind of seemed to really bring their best on this one. That production mixed with such great verses is really what lands this album at number 3 for me. It's a moment in CHH, yes, but it also helps that it sounds really good. And at number 2, I have an album that I owe a lot to. It's an album that is really responsible for kind of bringing me back into a love for this space and getting me to listen to as much as I did this year. The fact that it came out at the very beginning of the year was just really perfect in making me excited for CHH in 2024. And yeah, that album that I'm talking about is We Go On by Swoop. Now on this project, Swoop discusses grief in such a mature way, and I can't remember the last time a CHH album was this focused, this mature, this conceptual, this artistic. But it really should come as no surprise as Swoop has always been one of the greatest artists in our space. And if there's one thing that we can expect from Swoop, it's that he's going to make music that's thematic. He dubs himself the Christopher Nolan of rhyme after all, and that really shines through on this one. It, in a lot of ways, can feel like an audio movie. Maybe doesn't reach the heights of his early releases, Wake Up, Cinema, which are some of my favorites in this space. But this is just a great album from him. And yeah, I owe a lot to him. Thanks, Swoop. And at number 1, my project of the year, I have the YouTube exclusive album from none other than Andy Mineo for promotional use only. It feels a little weird putting this at number 1 just given the nature of a project like this. with it not being on DSPs due to uncleared samples, with it being a YouTube project that Andy just kind of seems to be using as a means to prepare us for what's to come. But man, this thing was too good to not put it number one. This is one of the most forward-thinking, experimental, and creative projects CHH has ever seen, and quite frankly, it's the best music that Andy has ever made. The sampling is masterful, and the subject matter is rich, especially for a project of this nature. We hear Andy struggling to kind of come to terms with aging, with the idea of being less cool, less hip. But yeah, there's nothing here that feels out of place in any sort of way. Like, everything works together super well. And when he released More Lost Than Found and I heard it as a single, I knew that Andy's departure from Reach was the best thing that possibly could have happened to him. Which might sound crazy to some of you, but it's just nice to be able to hear Andy make what he wants to make. And yeah, for me, this album worked on every level. Forever is one of the best songs I've potentially ever heard. There really isn't a song I dislike or even remotely dislike. Like, everything on here is incredible, and I've potentially never been more excited to see what an artist will do next than I am for whatever Andy has coming down the pipeline. And yeah, that's my top 25. What did you guys think? Agree? Disagree? Anything I missed? Anything I had too low? Anything I had too high? Feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. I really just want this to be an opportunity to discuss things with some of you, and yeah, feel free to subscribe. I'm planning to make more Christian hip-hop content throughout the year of 2025, and I'm really hoping to have some of you along on that journey with me. Until next time, I'll see you.